So I'm back in our investment calculator here, because we can still improve that code base here, refactor the code, and dive into more important Go features. Now, one small problem you maybe saw in the previous exercise where we built this profit calculator, which you can also see in this application here, is that when we're outputting these values here, so if we run this application and we enter our values here, we get that output, but it's not really that helpful. We basically have to know the code to know which value is what. We got no extra information in that output. And it would of course also be nice if these numbers would be rounded or something like that. So when it comes to outputting values, so to formatting text, strings as it's called in Go, in general, it's again this FMT package that can help us. For example, one easy way of quickly adding some extra information to this output here is to simply pass multiple values, multiple arguments, as it's called, to this println function. For example, if we want to share the information that this is the future value in the output we're showing in the terminal, we can add an additional string, an additional text here, and then separate this with a comma from the second value that's passed to println, and then here, for example, output future value colon. And thanks to how println works, it will now output both values in the same line, separated by a blank. So therefore, if we save this and we then run go run dot, we get asked all these questions, of course, so that we have to answer them, but then here you see that we now got an output where we got this extra future value text. So that's one easy way of adding more information to the output we're showing in the terminal. And we could of course also do that for the second line here and say future value adjusted for inflation or something like this. And unsurprisingly, when running this, we now also see this information in the terminal here. So that's a relatively easy way of outputting multiple string values or values in general in the console. But it's not the only way of formatting strings. Because, for example, it would also be nice if this future value number here would be formatted in a more readable way. I mean, we don't really care about all these extra numbers here. For us, it would probably be enough to have 2 digits of precision here, or maybe no decimal digits at all, so that we just output this number. And that's thankfully also pretty easy to do, again with help of the FMT package. Now for this, I'll comment it out by adding 2 forward slashes. That's how you add a comment in Go, and comments are then ignored by the Go compiler and runtime, so they're just there for you as a developer. And you can use this feature to add extra helpful text, like outputs information, that explains your code. But you can also use this comments feature, as I'm using it here, to comment out code which we want to keep around, but which we don't want to execute at the moment, so that we could still bring it back in the future if we want to go back to that code, but we don't use it right now. Because now I do want to output my content differently. Again, as mentioned, with the FMT package, but now not with println, but instead with printf, which stands for print the text in a formatted way, you could say. And you see the description of this function here, that it will output text with a certain format, which we can specify. Now, to learn about all the formatting options, you can dive into the official documentation of the FMT package in the official standard library documentation. There, if you search for FMT, you can dive into that documentation, and there you find some information on how you can format text, or which placeholders you can use in your print functions, or in your printf function to be precise, to format some values that are output in that text. For example here, if I want to output future value, colon, and then the value, we could of course separate it with commas with help of println, but when using printf, we can also use a special placeholder, the $V placeholder, which is the placeholder for outputting a value of a variable or constant. And then you have to pass a second argument to printf, which contains the value of that placeholder. So in this case, the future value, like this. If I do that, and I run the application again, you'll see that now I also still get my future value, but now without using println. Therefore, it's now also not adding a line break, because we're not using println again, but you can manually add that with \n, which is another special identifier, you could say, which you can add in this text here. And you can actually add this in any string, and as many of those as you want, to add line breaks there. This would then, for example, also allow you to now also add this text in the same printf text here, and also output the future real value by again using this %v placeholder and commenting out this code, since we're now outputting everything in this one line. And then here we can refer to the future real value. So you have to add as many arguments after this initial text here as you have placeholders in this text. And you have to add them in the order in which they should be used for those placeholders. So with that, again, if we run this application, we now get this spread across 2 lines because of this line break identifier we added here. And we got the same output as before, but now with one printf statement. And of course, that's now arguably a bit harder to read, and you therefore could stick to the approach we used before, but of course I now want to introduce you to how you can use printf to format text. Because outputting the values is not all you can do here.